Security, Asia. 3 ways China and America could go to war in the South China Sea. It's easy to imagine an even more serious confrontation in the SCS. Another accidental collision would be bad enough, but if a scenario developed similar to that of the downing of KAL-007, with a Chinese fighter jet actually opening fire on an American plane, the situation could get ugly very quickly. And if an American pilot fired upon a Chinese plane, the reaction of the Chinese public could become too much for Beijing to reasonably handle. Neither China nor the United States want war, at least not in the near future. China's military buildup notwithstanding, the People's Liberation Army, PLA, and its components are not ready to fight the United States. The U.S., for its part, would surely prefer to avoid the chaos and uncertainty that any military conflict with China would create. Recommended, a hypersonic arms race is coming. Nevertheless, both China and the United States are making commitments in the South China Sea that each may find difficult to back away from. Over the past 2 weeks, these commitments have generated a war of words that analysts of the relationship have found troubling. The key problems focus on China's efforts to expand, or create, islands in the Spratlys, which could theoretically provide the basis for claims to territorial waters. The insistence of the United States on freedom of navigation could bring these tensions to a boil. Here are 3 ways in which tensions in the South China Sea might lead to conflict. Recommended, report, U.S. Army is now weak island hopping in the SCS. Excitable fighter jets. China and the United States have already come close to conflict over aircraft collisions. When a P-3 Orion collided a Plan J-8 interceptor in 2001, it led to weeks of recriminations and negotiation before the crew of the P-3 was returned to the United States, and the plane was returned in a box. It's easy to imagine an even more serious confrontation in the SCS. Another accidental collision would be bad enough, but if a scenario developed similar to that of the downing of KAL-007, with a Chinese fighter jet actually opening fire on an American plane, the situation could get ugly very quickly. And if an American pilot fired upon a Chinese plane, the reaction of the Chinese public could become too much for Beijing to reasonably handle. If China decides to go ahead and declare an ADIZ over the South China Sea, matters could become even more complicated. The United States made an elaborate display of ignoring China's ADIZ in the East China Sea, but China has greater interests and a greater presence in the South China Sea. Another declaration would almost certainly incur a similar reaction from the United States, putting American and Chinese planes into close proximity. Submarine misunderstanding. In the Cold War, the Soviet Union and NATO suffered innumerable submarine near misses, as boats hunted each other, and occasionally bumped each other, in the Atlantic, the Arctic, and the North Sea. The dynamics of sub-interaction hasn't yet played out in quite the same way, in part because China has yet to establish a sustained SSBN patrol, and in part because Chinese boats do not range as far as their Soviet counterparts. But as the submarine force of the plan becomes more adventurous, submarine incidents may increase. Concluding thoughts. Accidental war is rare, but not impossible. Common to all of these scenarios is the potential that Chinese, or less likely, American, public opinion might become so inflamed as to box in policymakers. If Xi Jinping, who has made assertive foreign policy a cornerstone of his administration, feels that he cannot back down and survive politically, then things could get unpredictable very quickly. Robert Farley is a senior lecturer at the Patterson School of Diplomacy and International Commerce. Read full article.